Today we're going to be talking about burning a squarebill. I'll tell you what, burning a squarebill is an amazing way to force those bass to bite and to react. And hey, if you want to learn about open water squarebill crankbaiting, I'm going to put that video link at the end of this one, so make sure that you go ahead and stay tuned for that. Well, before we jump right into this, let's go and talk a little bit about the history of a squarebill. Way back in the mid to late 1970s, Rick Clunn, who is just a bass catching machine, was fishing a tournament, and he drew a man by the name of Fred Young as a partner. Now, Fred gave him a squarebill crankbait, and this was back in the day when you drew partners, it was a pro angler versus a pro angler. They weren't anglers or pro-am type tournaments, and Fred really wanted Rick to have this crankbait, so he gave him a squarebill. There had been some people using them, but they'd really kept them kind of secret, and Rick, because he wanted to be a courteous partner, he took it and he went and he threw it a little bit. And it was in this process that Fred Young explained to him, say, hey, listen, if you're going to throw a squarebill, make sure that you throw it right. And Rick had been cranking it like you would crank just any normal old crankbait. Well, Fred took this rod that had a squarebill on it, and he took that thing and tucked it down by his side and just ripped that lure, reeled it just as quickly as he could, and then told Rick, that is the way that you fish a squarebill. Well, Rick Clunn has never ever forgotten that. Now let's go ahead and fast forward to 1991, and Rick won a tournament on a squarebill crankbait, and at that point in time the squarebill had a brief little surge of popularity and then kind of faded into the background again. Then come 2000, Rick had back-to-back consecutive events where he finished second place with the squarebill, and the rest, you can say, is history. That bait once again surged up to the top of popularity, and anglers have been throwing squarebills and experimenting with them ever since. Just about every manufacturer's got some sort of squarebill. There's all kinds of different sizes, but really the theory and the idea of what we're going to talk about today is the same no matter what squarebill you are throwing. And what Fred Young had taught Rick Clunn was that you need to burn this bait. And before we were filming here, I went out for a couple hours this morning and was just throwing this thing, and you can see in the footage just burning this thing. My arm is absolutely killing me. Now the stage that we've got going on right here is in the last day or two. The bass are just starting to come up on beds. There's some fanned out. They're not really locked on yet, but they're getting shallow, and we know that the squarebill is just a shallow water fish catching machine. And the fish that I was catching this morning were your buck bass, some of those first ones that were coming up. And I'll tell you what, they just hit it. They just react to it. There was one fish that I was just about back to the boat, and this nice ultra clear water, and you could just see him. He just shoots up out of nowhere and grabs this thing almost to the point where I couldn't even catch him because it was so close back to the boat. The others, I was ripping it through some vegetation, and when you would feel that lure just pile into the weeds and I just yank it right through it, crank it through it, that's when they would hit it. It is so much fun. So let's go ahead and talk about the specifics so you can go out and really be effective with this technique. The first thing that you want to do is go ahead and put some heavier line on, because you are going to be pounding this thing into cover ripping it through weeds. So the first thing I did this morning is I stripped off all my 10-pound test and I sized it up to just some 17-pound monofilament. Because let me tell you, when you see a laydown and you throw that Squarebill past it and you're just cranking as fast as you can, it just targets right into it and bangs it. You want some heavier line, and you're going for a 100% reaction bite. So you're not really worried about the fish getting a good look at it. It's just coming by them too quickly. So that's the first thing. Make sure that you put some heavier line on, 15 pound, 17 pound. You will be in really good shape. The next thing is I definitely suggest throwing it on a crankbait rod. When you are ripping that lure through the water so quickly, and when that fish does take it, it's nice to have a little bit of give with that composite rod, that glass rod, where you've got a moderate action, a moderate tip to it, and there's more flex and give to it. So having a crankbait rod definitely is nice for this. Using a high-speed reel is okay because you are absolutely burning this thing. Now when you go to select your Squarebill, we've talked about tuning crankbaits in the past, but you really need to make sure that your Squarebill is in tune when you start this technique, and most of them right on the box do pretty good. But when you bring it at this high velocity, this high rate of speed through the water, if it's slightly out of tune, it's really going to track off to one side or the other. So before you make your first cast, go ahead and toss it out there, let it run right back to you straight, and make sure that line is coming right back to you, either on the bank or in the boat. And if you got to take your pliers and adjust the tie down here a little bit, that is okay, because the Squarebill has got to run straight. So that's definitely the first thing that you want to do once you got that lure tied on. Now as far as the type of Squarebill color in here, I started off this morning with one like this, and literally on my first cast, a nice bass, probably 2.5, 3 pounds, took a swipe at it but didn't commit. I just saw it just shoot out of the weeds, come up and swipe at this one, but then turned quickly away. And that's like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and change the color because I want them to commit. When they're swiping at a lure, that's a good sign something's not quite 100% what they want. So I put on this Fire Tiger, which more matches the sunfish and bluegill we have in this lake, and there was no more swiping. Every fish I got from there, they hit it really, really well. So as far as colors go, make sure that you go ahead and adjust color until they hit it well, not just swipe at it. So keeping a good collection of multiple colors of Squarebills is definitely something that you eventually want to strive for. I know they can be expensive, but you know, add them to your collection over a period of time, and I think you'll be in good shape. The next thing that we need to do when we're using a Squarebill, and if you've got stained water to muddy water, this is absolutely a must, is you want to just get it as close to the bank as possible. If you've got really clear water, that changes a little bit. I've found, like on my lake here, that if I start to target right where that shoreline dips down and it gets a little bit harder to see the depths, that's where most of my hits, strikes, and bites are coming from. But if you got stained to dirty water, you want to get just inches from the bank, because oftentimes that strike in those types of water clarities is almost instantaneous. You'll get those hits within the first 12 to 18 inches of the bank. So make sure you get it up there as shallow as you can, and don't worry, the Squarebill is going to come right through that stuff and bounce off the rocks, wood, whatever you've got. So make sure you get it really, really shallow. What makes this technique so good is that it literally forces the bass to react. If something just flashes right by them and they just immediately react to it, their instincts kick in. And I don't care how fast you reel this lure, those bass can catch it. You never have to worry about them not being able to grab it. Like the first one that I had strike at mine this morning, that bass was moving so quick, I could have had a 200 to 1 reel, and I don't think I could have burned that thing quicker than what that bass was swimming towards that lure. So make sure that you really just crank down, reel it, and go, 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 go. And it is exhausting. I mixed today between just a straight burning retrieve and then a burn, pause, burn, pause, burn, pause. So go ahead and mix it up and see which one that you like the best. But pretty much all of the strikes were coming when this lure tore itself through vegetation, and then I just keep ripping it right through there, and boom, that's when they would hit. As a matter of fact, the first one that I caught with it, there was still vegetation on the lure. That bass reacted to it and hit it as soon as it popped out of there. And you're gonna find that you're one of the few people on the lake or river that's doing this. I mean, burning a squarebill is something that anglers know about, but there's not that many that do it. And I think a lot of it is because, one, you feel like you're doing something wrong because you're just pulling it through the water so quickly. And two, it is exhausting. Like I said, my shoulder is really, really sore this morning, but it is such a fun bite. So make sure that you give it a try. And the cool thing about this burning a squarebill, this is not a 2-month type of a tactic. You can use this for the majority of the year. I mean, it's probably not in the dead of winter, okay, when that water gets super, super cold, but I'm talking from early spring all the way through until late fall. This burning a squarebill is something that you can definitely do. You can fish this thing all summer, spring, and fall for sure. The last thing that I want to talk about is the size of the squarebill that you are using. Let me go ahead and break these out again, and here's a really good example. So each of these, the 1.5 and the 2.5, really run about real close to the same depth. The 2.5 will get down there a little bit deeper, but look at the body size, the profile difference. So if you've got some shad or bait fish that are a little bit broader, bigger in profile, go with a little bit larger squarebill. I was using a 1.5 this morning, just because I was going to try to throw it in some real skinny water, and also a lot of the bluegills and stuff that I've seen up shallow, there's been a lot of really tiny ones. But don't be afraid to change profile sizes as well, depending on your fishery. Hey, if you want to get some more information on open water squarebill fishing, make sure you click this video right here. This is a good one as well for a little bit different way to present squarebills. And don't forget to go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life for the bass fishing life. I'm your host, Steve Rogers.